Hi there, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today we're talking about the Praxis Teaching Reading 5205. I'm going to quickly go over the test spec and blueprint, and then I'm going to jump into the constructed response for this exam. Let's get started. All right, so you know I'm going to take you to the blueprint and the specs for the Praxis Teaching Reading 5205, and you can see that it mirrors many of the reading assessments out there. This one is very similar to the Pearson Foundations of Reading, the Reading Specialist exam, the K-12 reading exam. They all kind of assess the same things. Basically, you're taking this exam so that you can be either, one, a reading teacher, because that's going to be your content area, or in some states, they make you take a test like this because you have a lot of low-level readers in your class and they need you to be skilled at helping those struggling readers. So some states will make you take this exam even if you're not being a reading teacher. You might be a social studies teacher, but you have a lot of level 1 and 2 readers in your classes, okay? So let's take a look at the blueprint really quickly. We have phonological and phonemic awareness. I have a ton of videos on that on our YouTube channel, and I have programs that we have for the Pearson Foundations of Reading and the Reading Specialists that cover all of that. Phonics and decoding, vocabulary and fluency, comprehension of literary and informational text. Then we have writing, and then we have assessment of instructional decision-making. This is the constructed response section right there. Now we're going to focus mainly on the constructed response section because I have so many videos already for sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what I will do is link in the description, not just the free YouTube videos, but I'll also link some programs that we have on our website that will help you with this exam. Okay, and then you can use this constructed response to kind of supplement that. So let's go to the constructed response section of this test. All right, so this is taken right from the ETS study companion. I'm not going to use the writing that they did. I'm going to change it up a little bit. They have a sample response in their study companion that you can take a look at, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and I'm going to explain that in a second. But basically what you're going to have is some sort of scenario situation here, and then you are going to have the task here. Well, where do I say you should go first before reading this entire scenario? You're going to want to start with the task. You're going to want to figure out exactly what you are supposed to be doing. So do that first. So let's do that. Task 1, based on the information above, identify and describe 2 very important specific ways that Mr. Jimenez can group students. So we're looking for 2 types of grouping that would best address their specific needs. Be sure to include in your response the benefit. So we want to make sure why we're doing this, of grouping practice and further developing students' skills. Okay, so let's just think about grouping activities when it comes to reading. We have flexible grouping, which is you're moving them in and out of groups all over the place. You could do centers, where you have students moving through maybe a listening center or a fluency center or a phonemic awareness center or a phonics center, depending on what you're comfortable with. We also have literature circles. That's a type of grouping where students are reading literature or informational text together and discussing, and they each have a job to do inside that cooperative structure. You could also do jigsaw activities with students in groups. You could do word sorts in groups. You could do leveled readers in groups, all kinds of different things. There are also 2 main types of groups. We have homogeneous grouping, where everybody in the group is the same. And we have heterogeneous grouping, where the kids in the group are different levels, different interests, different something, okay? So homogeneous grouping, the same. Heterogeneous grouping, different. And I'm going to show you how that plays out in just a second, okay? You would only use homogeneous grouping temporarily, meaning when you group students based on skill. So let's say I want to put all my level 1 readers together because I want to target their deficits and I want to work with them for like 20 minutes in the school day. I'm going to group them homogeneously temporarily. They're not going to stay in that group because if you keep students in that group, they don't have a chance to work with other kids. They're always with the low-level readers. It's just not good practice. We want to, for the most part, use heterogeneous grouping. But if we're trying to be specific and intervene, we would use homogeneous grouping, but only temporarily. Now let's go to task 2, right here. Identify and describe the purpose of 2 differentiated instructional strategies that Mr. Jimenez can use to improve students' learning of print-based materials. So we're going to do 2 grouping scenarios and 2 activities, and then we have to identify some differentiated instructional strategies we need to accommodate, all right? So this can be a little bit difficult, but actually, if you organize it properly, it's fine. So here is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to organize it. I'm going to do my grouping strategy, and then I'm going to describe my differentiation. So group strategy 1, and then what I'm going to do to differentiate. Then I'm going to do group strategy 2, and then I'm going to differentiate so that the differentiation matches each group strategy. And that'll play out when you see my actual response. All right, so let's just take a look at the overall structure of what's going on here. I have the first grouping technique, and then I have how I'm going to differentiate within that group. Then I have the second grouping technique, and then I have how I'm going to differentiate in that group. So really I have group 1 here, and I have group 2 here, all right? So these are going to be together here, and this is going to be together here. That's how I would do it. Now, in the study companion, they do it a little bit differently. They do group strategy 1, group strategy 2, differentiated 1, differentiated 2. I like this method because I want my differentiation to be hooked to my grouping strategies so that it makes more sense. Now remember, it doesn't matter the way you structure it, you just have to make sure that you complete the task in its entirety that it's asking you to do. And what are the things it's asking you to do? First, it's asking you for 2 grouping strategies based on the scenario. The second thing that it's asking you to do is to differentiate within those groups, all right? So let's take a look at the scenario. So before I looked at the scenario, I already have my tasks ready to go. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. That's going to help me understand the scenario better and come up with a better plan. So always go to the tasks first, then go to the scenario. Here we go. Mr. Jimenez is a 6th grade science teacher. All right, science. He teaches a diverse group of 24 students. 8 of the students read at a 4th grade level. So he's a 6th grade teacher, and he's got 8 at 2 grade levels below. Okay. And they often need instructional support in reading informational materials. Well, isn't science typically all informational materials? We're normally not reading literature in science. Sometimes I used to read the Life of Henrietta Lacks in science to bring in some literary text. It's a really good book, but it has to do with cells and all of that. But in this case, we're probably reading for the most part informational text throughout the day in science. So we have 8 reading at a 4th grade level. 6 are reading proficiently. So 8 are at a 4th. 6 are on level. And let's see here. The remaining 10 students, we got 10, are below 2 grades. That's what it says there. They're below 2 grades and have significant difficulty in reading the science text with fluency, particularly with decoding and understanding the meaning of unfamiliar content-specific words. So they're kind of giving you some information here to use. So as you differentiate, you're going to want to differentiate for these things here, okay? So he's a 6th grade teacher, science teacher. We're reading mainly informational text in science, and that's where the kids are struggling. We have 8 that read 2 grade levels below, so that's at the 4th grade level. We have 6 who are on level, and we have 10 who are below 2 grade levels below. So we've got a mix of kids here, and we're going to have to differentiate and scaffold and support for all of them, all right? Now, let's take a look at my essay. All right, so you already know the basic structure because I just went over it. I've got my first group strategy here, and then how I'm going to differentiate within that. Then I have my second group strategy here, and then how I'm going to differentiate that. All right, so let's take a look at the first grouping technique. All right, the first grouping technique Mr. Jimenez can use is literature circles. Look, I know a lot about literature circles, so I'm going to go with what I know here. And I know that I have some students on grade level and I have students just below grade level. So what I can do is I can take literature circles and intermingle those students in heterogeneous grouping. And then the high level kids can help pull up the low level kids, and the low level kids can do some things within the literature circle. So I love literature circles. I'm comfortable talking about them, comfortable writing about them. You should do the same. Figure out a strategy you're comfortable with and use them in these situations. So I have the students who are on a 4th grade level can be combined with the students who are on level in, and then I use this term, heterogeneous grouping. Now, when I use the term heterogeneous, I show my content area knowledge, right? Because in teaching reading, we need to understand the difference between homogeneous grouping and heterogeneous grouping. And we went over that before. Remember, homogeneous grouping means the same. All the kids in the group are the same. Heterogeneous grouping means different. So in this case, we have the 4th grade level readers and the 6th grade level readers together. They are different, so they're in heterogeneous groups. And so we're going to have them read and discuss informational text. Now I get specific into what this particular strategy is going to do. There can be 4 to 5 members to a group, and Mr. Jimenez can predetermine the roles of each group member. This is important. The proficient readers will be the readers, and the students who are below can be the note takers. The reason why we do this is because then the note takers can hear the fluency in the proficient readers, but they're still part of the group. And they don't have to read aloud in front of their peers and feel like weird. Okay, this is just a good way to do that. The readers will read one paragraph and then stop. Together, the students will discuss what is read and the note takers will jot down important information. Okay, heterogeneous grouping. We got 2 sets of students. Everything looks good here. Now I need how I'm going to differentiate for this group 1. To differentiate for this activity, Mr. Jimenez will identify academic vocabulary that may be complex for students and discuss that. So that's a differentiation technique. We're not just going to throw them in the literature circles and have them just read. Maybe beforehand, we're going to pre-teach some vocabulary. We might also want to show a short video clip to kind of help the students with background knowledge. That helps. And finally, I did 3 differentiated techniques here. You could do just one. You don't have to do all 3. I like to overdo it for you guys so that you have lots of things to pick from, but you could do just one thing you're going to differentiate. You could do the note-taking part of the lesson. Students can use a guided note-taking graphic organizer. Easy. That's a great differentiating technique. All I have to do is, before we start the literature circles, I hand out a note-taking graphic organizer to help keep the students focused, to help them take their notes. It's a differentiation technique. Perfect, all right? I do 3 here, but I only do that for this video to show you the 3 different ways. You could do just one, and you could attach it as the last sentence to this one paragraph here. This could be a 2-paragraph situation. You could go through the grouping techniques here, and then the last sentence you could say, to differentiate, I would show a short video clip to help activate background knowledge before students read the complex text. That's it. That's a differentiation, and it covers it, okay? Now let's go to the second one. And let me erase some of what I've got going on here because it's a little bit distracting. All right, so now we have the second grouping structure. Remember, they wanted 2 grouping structures. The second grouping structure Mr. Jimenez can use is temporary homogeneous grouping, okay? Temporary homogeneous grouping. And this is to target specific skills. Those are good words. You'll always hear me talk about good words when we are talking about homogeneous grouping. I've got my low levels in a group and I want to target. I want to pinpoint what's going on and help them with that. The first group will be the 6 students who are on grade level. Okay. They can participate in a jigsaw activity. So we're homogeneously grouping the kids who are on grade level. They're going to go over here and they're going to do a jigsaw activity where they read, each person reads a section and then discuss the section with the group. The second homogeneous group are going to be the students on the 4th grade level. So they're all going to be in a group on their own. And they could be broken up in 2 groups of 4 because remember, there are 8 of those kids. They will participate in a read aloud, think aloud, and use metacognitive strategies to understand the text. These are other strategies that I'm very familiar with. I'm familiar with Jigsaw. I'm familiar with metacognitive, read aloud, think aloud. These are also in our books and in our courses. We talk about them, we beat them into the ground. We talk about them constantly, all right? And then for the last group, which are my low levels, the kids who are below 2 grade levels, finally, the last group of students, and then I put in here the 10 students significantly below, will partner read. Leveled text, that means they're going to read grade level text, which is 2 or more levels below what the students who are on grade level are reading, on the same topics that the others are. So let's say I'm one of the kids that is significantly below. I'm partnered up with another student who is significantly below, and we're partner reading on our grade level. All right, just to get that fluency down. And I probably, now that I'm thinking about it, would add that to work on fluency, okay, and word recognition. That would make this better. All right, so my second grouping technique would be a homogeneous grouping technique where I have my on-level readers here, my 4th grade level readers here, and my significantly below grade levels readers here. And I have an activity for each one, all right? Now, I'm going to talk about differentiation. To differentiate for each group, the on-level students can generate their own questions. Now, generating questions is a critical thinking technique, and it increases complexity. Because remember, with your on-grade level students, you're always pushing them. Well, you're pushing all your students. You're always wanting to challenge all students. But if they're just on grade level, we want to keep pushing them along. So you want to bump up the complexity, and generating their own questions will help them do that. All right, that's a differentiation. The second group, and that's the read aloud, think aloud group, can use semantic mapping graphic organizers. Notice that I talked about metacognitive strategies here. Metacognitive is thinking about your thinking. So a semantic map would help them to organize that. So that's a differentiation technique, a scaffolding technique. And finally, the last group, the partner reads, can use repeated reading to work with their fluency. So let's say they're not great the first time they read it again, read it again, read it again. Repeated reading is really good for fluency, all right? So this right here would get me probably all the points that I need to pass for the constructed response. I have my 2 grouping strategies, which was indicated in the task, and then I have how I would differentiate for each grouping strategy, all right? I use things that I'm comfortable talking about, literature circles, metacognition, jigsaw activities, repeated reading, partner reading, and then I organize that in a way so that the person who is grading my essay does not have to hunt for what is being asked. I have task 1, which is the groups, and I have task 2, which is the differentiation. Very easy to identify, very easy to give me a good score so that I can pass this test. All right, so I hope that clears things up for you for the constructed response section for the 5205 Praxis teaching reading. Remember, you're going to want to really understand those foundational skills of reading along with metacognitive strategy and comprehension strategies in order to effectively write for this exam. So you're going to need to study the multiple choice sections very carefully and apply that to the constructed response section. Remember, everything I talked about today will be linked up in the description below so you can access that. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Make sure to tell your colleagues we're here, and have an awesome day. Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel. Please consider subscribing and following me on my social media networks at Kathleen Jasper. Have a great day.